Right, I've been buying junk on eBay again. I bought this Dremel 10.8 volts. It says 2010 on it, so it's a good few years old, but it looks like new, but obviously isn't. A little bit dusty, so it obviously has been used. Cordless, battery on the end, charger, instructions, and a flexi something or other. I guess that fits on here. Of course it doesn't work. I'm assuming that you turn this and that turns it on, but of course nothing happens. You'd think it would click. I mean, I don't know because I've never seen one of these before, but it doesn't click. And we've got some red lights which are something to do with battery, I presume. So presumably if you've got, is it perhaps more red lights is better? I don't know, but we've got red lights anyway. Battery, well, like I say, doesn't work. Now let's check the battery first. Right, let's try checking the battery. It's quite handy. It says plus and minus on it. It might have different pins for charging, but that doesn't matter because all we want to know is it charged up. And if I put this on here and on here, I get 11.5 volts. It says 10.8, but really that means it's a 12 volt battery, so we're pretty close to being fully charged, I should think, at 11.5 volts. I think fully charged is about 12.6 volts, so battery seems to be okay. So whatever the fault is, it's this and not that. Right, looks like we got 4 screws holding it together, and maybe this thing on the end has to come off as well. So I'll unscrew that first. Yep, that definitely has to come off because there's a joint there, so we'll take that off. And then this is a T10. Oh, get out of the way. Right, so that's the 4 screws out of the way. Right, now which side do we need to look at from? I suppose from this side, because that's where the screws were. So we'll take that off and hope that we don't have a million pieces fly out everywhere. There's not exactly a lot inside this, is there? Look. One cheapo Chinese motor. One, I'm guessing that's a variable speed board. So what we really need to know is if we fit or we hook up 12 volts to there and there, will the motor spin? Right, this is from my variable voltage supply. It doesn't give very much current, so it doesn't really like working on motors particularly, but it works my homemade Dremel that I converted to 12 volts, so it should have no problem working this motor. When it comes on, it's only 3 volts. Oh. Oh, well, for some reason my variable power supply, oh there we go, it's come back to life again. Right, 3 volts. Wow, that's 4 volts. My God, 6, 9. Whoa, that does go fast. I mean, look how fast it's going, and that's 3 volts. Right, so all of this bit seems to be working, motor's working, clearly this isn't. So that's where our problem is. Does this lift out? Oh, I should imagine it all lifts straight out, doesn't it? Oh, there we go. Right, now I need to remember that that little button is in there because I had terrible trouble once before when that fell out on something. Right, so if that's there, there's the little red windows down there. You might not be able to see them on the video, which means somewhere there should be... Oh yeah, there they are. 1, 2, 3 little lights. Alright, now does this... Yeah, this pulls off. But it's going to want a little bit of help by the looks of things. There he goes. Right, is there any markings to say? Oh yeah, look, red wire, red dot on the motor, so we're okay on that score. So let's get this one off. Oh, come on, get under there. There we are. Right. Now that we could take off for a minute, and we could put that seemed to set there, so we could leave that there. That bearing feels as good as new. Motor feels okay, you can feel the magnetism inside there. So, is this meant to click? Because it doesn't. So we need to try to find out why there is nothing from here to there. Now if I knew a lot about electronics I would know more. I'm guessing this is something to do with it. Right, let's just put a little drop of alcohol on there. Give it a brush over. I mean, obviously that's not going to fix anything, but at least it looks a little bit cleaner, or at least I hope it does. There's quite a bit of dust in there. Now, I'm no electronics expert, as anybody who watches this channel knows, but I'm guessing that that might be a triac, and it's somehow used to chop things up to give us a variable output. So it somehow chops up the voltage and gives us a variable output, but I could be completely wrong on that score. But we'll learn together as I try to work it out. Well, I've tested every resistor, and there's quite a lot of them, and they all seem to be roughly in spec. And if I put the meter across this point and this point, you can see I've got a reading on the meter, and if I start turning this, you can see that I'm actually affecting the resistance, and that's presumably because I've got the bottom of the potentiometer or variable resistance anchored there, so when I turn it, obviously what I'm doing is I'm adjusting this, so that suggests that the variable resistor is okay. So all the resistors are okay, the variable resistor is okay. I'm left with this thing here which says on it that 120W003FN, I think that's what it says. Then it's got an I, diode sign, R, P711G, and then here it says K8 and there it says K6, but I'm guessing that's something to do with the numbers, so I need to look that up and find out what that is. And this is that thing there on the heatsink, and as far as I can tell it says DA08AE FDP 6670AL. Now I've tried putting resistance or checking resistance on these pins, but I don't actually know what I'm supposed to be seeing, so I need to go in and look on the internet and see if I can find out what these two things are and what they're supposed to be doing. Right, I've done some searching on the internet. Apparently this is not a MOSFET. This is some kind of, I don't know, it's like a dual diode. I'm not quite sure exactly what it is, but it's some kind of diode. But this one is a MOSFET. And as far as I can tell, it's gate, drain and source. But if I go from drain to source, which is this one and this one way I should get no reading, which I do. And then if I swap these round the other way, I get 653. Now I think that is correct. On this one, this is effectively like having two diodes. So from there to there, one way we should get a reading, and if we swap them over, we shouldn't, and we don't. And if we go to this one and this one, we don't get a reading. But if we go back and do it that way round, we get a reading. So this is behaving as I would have expected it to. I don't know if this was a good idea or not. I just pulled this off of the variable resistor. I don't know if it's supposed to be chewed up on the end like that. It looks like it's sort of been burnt on, but maybe when it was put in they melted it from that side to stop it coming off. Obviously I can't do much about that now unless I take the whole thing off the board, which is maybe my next trick. But what I'm going to do is to spray some contact cleaner inside there. Right, we'll try this and see what that does. So that's full over that way, that's full over that way, that's full over that way. It's funny because there's nothing to tell you that you've actually turned it on. I was expecting it to sort of go, you know, start turning it, get a click, and then it would be on. Right, something has changed since cleaning it, because if I go from there to there, more or less naught, and if I go from here to here, 270 something. I didn't get a reading across there at all before. That's with this more or less on naught. If I turn this round now so that it would be set on 10, and I go back to that first one there, 270 something, so what, 269, 270, and it was naught, and then this one, which was 270-ish, is now naught. That was not happening before I cleaned the potentiometer, so it's just possible that the fault is the potentiometer. Now whether you can buy this potentiometer or not, I have no idea. And it's possible, of course, that the contact cleaner has cleaned it. I did some reading last night, which I should have done at the beginning, and this is a switch and a variable resistor. So when you first turn it, you should feel and hear a click, and that's it turning on and off, but nothing happens. And then once you're past the click, when it's on, then it becomes a variable resistor, and that increases the speed of the motor. And then you come back, and then when you get almost to 0, it should go click and turn off. But it doesn't. And I did some searching on the internet, and it would appear that that connection, I don't know how well it will show, but that connection there, that one there, and that one there, so those three are the variable resistor. And this one here and this one here are the on and off switch. So in theory, if I can manage to bridge from there to there, it should be on. So I think what I'll try to do is either touch these two together, which is going to be almost impossible with the battery in place, or solder a wire from there to act as the switch. Right, that's two wires, one soldered on there and one soldered on there, so in theory when I connect these together I'm connecting the switch. We need our battery, which is plus that side, so that's our battery on. Now what happens when we connect these? Any sign of life? Nothing. Oh, battery wasn't on. Look, we got life. Disconnect. No life. So what is coming out of here? Can we get the motor? Let's see if we can get the motor to connect onto there. Right, nothing at the moment because the battery's not quite lined up, so let's get those twisted together, then we'll be on. So they're together. Alright. Oh, we've got movement. Then we've lost movement. Off. So, it works, but the switch doesn't work. Pull that off again. Now apparently, if I understand what I saw on the internet correctly, this outer case here is the switch, and then inside that is the variable resistor. Now I'm wondering if this outer case will lift off and leave the variable resistor behind. So what I'm going to do is trying to desolder just those two spots and see if this will lift off. Unfortunately there are two little plastic pegs, one there and one there, and I don't know if they're too big to be pushed back through the board, and they could be part of this case. So although I've unsoldered it, not completely but a fair bit there and there, I can't get any movement at all, and I don't know if it's those plastic pegs. Right, I've had to undo or unsolder way more than I wanted to, but it would appear that I can finally lift this piece off, and inside there is this little bit that swivels, which sits in there, which I think is the switch, and then this, which has managed to pull its pad off with it, so that's going to be a nuisance, is the variable resistor. Right, I don't know, I won't know till I look later how well you can see this, but this appears to be the switch, and the contacts appear to be fused together, which would mean that they would be on all the time, but clearly they're not, so something has gone amiss. It looks like that pin goes down across, and that's the contacts for the switch, and then there's a little lump here that moves the contact, then it comes back across, and then it comes up here, and so this is all work them out, but I guess it's all partly melted in, so I'll keep trying to get those bits up and out. Right, well I think I know what's happening here. This bottom arm, which would be the contact that moves, is actually, it's welded itself to the plastic. It won't, I can't shift it at all, so a bit more brute force is going to be needed to try and get it out. Right, managed to free one of them. That's the one that's not completely melted in, but it is melted. It's got bits of molten plastic stuck. You might be able to see them on there. So it was obviously stuck in position, but this one is actually deep into the plastic. Well, it's taken about 20 minutes, but I finally got that piece out, and again you can see possibly there it's got melted plastic on it, there and there. So I think, and there, and in fact all across here and right over to the contacts. So in fact, although the contacts were sort of fused together, they were actually fused together with plastic. That's plastic, and it's right across the contact. Yeah, there you go, that scratches off. So that's why the switch wouldn't work. You probably can't see this even with a light shone in there, but there is a whole sort of like a snake path right the way across up this top surface at the bottom, where the whole contact had welded itself to the base of the plastic. So clearly whoever spec'd this did not spec it with enough current carrying capacity, and it just got hot. Eagle-eyed people might spot that my bench is actually slightly tidier than normal. The reason for that is this little thing here. That was a black piece of plastic, and when I went to pull it out the other day, it pinged off, and I have searched everywhere and it's just gone. I can't find it anywhere. So I've had to make that little piece of plastic, which is basically a circle, hole in the middle, but the hole has to be a sort of oval shape, a little cutout because the spring has got a notch in it, and then when you turn it, it closes the contacts, and when you go back they open again. This is very hard to do any closer to the camera because I've got to get in here and move it, but if I turn the blue disc below, that way it won't go any further because that's fully open, and if I turn it this way you'll see the whole thing moving because I can't turn just the blue disc. There you are, contacts joined together, and if I go back, contacts not joined together. And if I go forward again, contacts joined together. And they need to stay joined together all the way around. So if I keep turning round, round, round and round, so I think we could be okay. Right, it might not be obvious, but that's a sort of square shape or straight edge. And it's sort of straight edge there and sort of straight edge here and then curved, which means that this will only go in one way. It will only go in like that, and then push that down, and in theory now the switch underneath is held in place by this, and then when this is on the board the whole thing will be held in place. The problem I've got is the board, because that point there has lost this bit. So I'm not quite sure what this is actually making connection with, because it almost looks like it's not touching any track. which is very confusing, unless of course it's not touching any track on this side because it's touching a track on this side, which it might well be. Let's have a look. Is it that one? No, it's not that one, it's this one. No, I can't tell if that's touching the track this side or not. Look, it's very, very close to that component there, whatever that is. No, I honestly don't know. So we could have a problem of when we assemble this, because there's not going to be a connection this side. But like I say, I can't see where there should have been a connection. I'll try and get this under something that will magnify it a bit more and see if I can find out. Right, I've cleaned this as best I can. It's a wire, I think, that's damaged there. It doesn't appear to touch anything on this side. My best guess is it touches that component there, and I'm not actually sure what that is. It looks like it's a resistor. It could just be that that touches that resistor. I think the only thing I can do is try to solder this back together again, because if I look on the other side, it's there, and there's a large track here, and it's not touching that. There's a small track here, and it's not touching that. So this does not appear to be touching anything at all on this side. And then when I go to this side, like I say, it still doesn't appear to be touching anything, which I don't quite understand. But it's so close to that resistor that there could have been a tiny bit of track there that I now can't see. So I think all I can do is solder this back in and see what the result is. Right, you can't tell easily from this side, but that's the pin sticking through. One there, one there, one there, one there, and one there. One plastic lug, so they've gone back in okay. So although I cut this one a bit shorter, I obviously didn't need to. And you can see from looking at it from this angle, it's pushed on and it seems to be free to move. I have sort of held the multimeter against that point and this point, and then with my other 10 fingers tried to wiggle this, and it does still seem to be switching on and off. So those two should be okay for the switch. We've got this point and this point to solder, but like I say, I'm still stuck with this because I don't know what's happening at this point. So I'll get these soldered. I won't bother to show you the soldering because there won't be anything to see, because if you look at the size of my soldering iron, by the time I've got that in there and a piece of solder at the same time, there's not going to be anything to see. I can barely see myself. Right, it's back together. I'm not 100% sure how well I can show this. Let's turn that round. The switch connection is from there to there, and then I think I've pointed that out before, and then the variable resistor part is from there to there to there. When I first assembled it and tested it, it didn't work. I managed to get the switch part to work, and then the lights at the top here came on, but the variable part didn't work. And then I realised that this is a connection here, so I put a connection from this pin across to, there's a resistor, a tiny resistor next to it, and it looks like you need that connection there. Of course I couldn't tell because that got torn off during disassembly. So that's that basically back together. So if I take the battery, I've kept this side marked plus all the time so I can't put the battery on the wrong way around. So if I take the battery, put the battery onto there, it sometimes loses connection because this obviously isn't being held tight. So what I'll do is I'll put that bit of blue tack underneath there to give that something to rest on. I'll hold that bit. We're on 0 at the moment. Did you see the little red lights come on? So that turns it on. Hopefully you can see it and hear it. It's getting faster and faster and faster and so on. And then off again. So with luck it's fixed. So what I'll do now is put it back together. But I need to clean these parts first. They're very clean anyway, but I'm going to give them a nice clean. Now, before I reassemble this, I'm going to put a little drop of oil on the end of the motor because it seems to use this sort of, well, it's not really a proper bearing, but that bronze bush is really acting as the rear bearing, and the one on the other end, same thing again. So I try and get a little drop of oil into those. So it's spinning nice and freely. Now the bearing here is absolutely fine. There's no free play in it, no sort of rattle to it. It's absolutely fine. I'm going to try to see if I can get a little drop of oil into it, but it looks like it's shielded all round, so I think the chances are that any oil I put on here won't go in, but I'm going to put a little bit round here and then I'll spin that for a little bit and see if any of that wants to go in. I don't like prizing off these shields and trying to put a little bit of extra grease or oil inside, because I find that very often the shield doesn't sit down properly afterwards, and that's obviously not a good idea with something that's going to spin. Well, obviously this isn't actually going to spin, but the middle's spinning in relation to that, so I don't really want anything that's not fitted properly. So let's try reassembling this. So this goes in the bottom there, that sits on top and acts a bit like a spring, and then this needs to go down, and it's sort of got a resting place that's difficult to see, but obviously the wheel part sits in a hole. Oh, there we go, and that's down, and I think that's gone into the right spot. It's difficult to be sure you've actually got it in exactly the right spot, but when you're there, obviously it's holding these two pegs, it's holding the circuit board in place. The motor's more or less holding itself by resting in the right spot. This bearing is in the right spot, hopefully. So if everything is in the right place, then obviously this should fit on with no problem. That should all just sit down. Now that's got on reasonably okay. Put the nose back on. Right, then I think we're in business. I thought they'd be fiddly, and they are. 1, 2, 3, 4. Now I think I'm going to start them off by hand. Stopped. Right, so this now presumably can't go in the wrong way round because of the shape of it, so that's in. So, does it work? And there we go. And off. Right, I'll just test this sort of little mini sanding drum thing on here. It's a bit of old rusty steel. And that's on pretty much the lowest setting. That's on number 2. Obviously I would never use this on something this big, I don't use it on something small, but turn it up a bit more, obviously it gets a lot noisier. But that's not bad, look. I mean, it's clearing that rust off okay. And off. So I would say it's fixed.